AMD's new Radeon RX 5500 XT graphics card is available with both 4GB and 8GB options. But what are the differences between these, and which should you get? I've compared 17 games at 1080p and 1440p resolutions to help you decide. In terms of specs, both are the same, with the only difference being the memory sizes. The 4GB model starts at $170 while the 8GB model starts at $200. For the testing, I'm using the Gigabyte Gaming OC 8GB and the Sapphire Pulse 4GB. The system that I'm testing with has an Intel i7-8700K CPU overclocked to 5GHz on all cores and an MSI Z390 Ace motherboard, along with 16GB of DDR4 3200 CL14 memory and dual channel. You can check the links in the description for details on all of the components as well as for up-to-date pricing. Testing was done with the latest Windows 1909 fully up to date and with the latest Radeon drivers available at the time of testing. So with all of that out of the way, let's get into the results. Call of Duty Modern Warfare was tested in campaign mode. I've got the 1080p results on the lower half of the graph and the 1440p results towards the upper half. In this test, the 8GB card was 9% ahead in average FPS at 1080p, increasing to a higher 17.6% increase at 1440p. Control is an example of a game where the extra memory doesn't really seem to matter too much. At 1080p, the results were extremely close together and within margin of error range. At 1440p though, the 8GB was now almost 2% ahead in average frame rate. Granted, with these frame rates, you wouldn't be playing at 1440p high settings anyway. Red Dead Redemption 2 was tested using the game's built-in benchmark tool. The 8GB option had a significant 33% higher average frame rate over the 4GB, lowering a little to a 28.5% lead at 1440p, so the extra memory speed seemed quite beneficial in this test. Battlefield 5 was tested in campaign mode, and saw the largest difference out of all 17 titles tested. I triple-checked these results and consistently got the same numbers. It seems that this game greatly favors additional VRAM, or at least the area I test in. At 1080p, the 8GB 5500 XT was 58% higher in terms of average FPS, rising up to a huge 63% boost at 1440p. Even the 1% low from the 8GB card was ahead of the averages the 4GB was able to offer. Shadow of the Tomb Raider was tested with the game's benchmark tool, and was another test that heavily favored the 8GB 5500 XT. At 1080p, the average FPS on the 8GB was 25% higher than the 4GB, rising up to a 34% lead at 1440p. Apex Legends was tested with all graphical settings at maximum. However, the memory limit in the game's settings was set to 4GB for the 4GB card or 8GB for the 8GB card. At 1080p, the 1% low from the 8GB wasn't too far off the average FPS from the 4GB, and it came out 22% ahead in average frame rate. At 1440p though, the difference dropped, with the 8GB now 11.5% ahead of the 4GB, though both were still delivering above 60 FPS averages. Borderlands 3 was tested with the game's benchmark tool, and was another title where the 1% low performance from the 8GB card was near the average FPS from the 4GB. At 1080p, the 8GB 5500 XT was scoring 16% higher average FPS when compared to the 4GB, rising to almost a 19% increase at 1440p. Fortnite was tested using the replay feature, with the exact same replay file used for all testing. This was another case where there was no major difference between the two, with just a 1 or 2% increase with the 8GB version, so basically margin of error stuff. PUBG was also tested using the replay feature, with the same replay file again. The results were kind of similar. No major differences regardless of using the 4GB or 8GB 5500 XT. Assassin's Creed Odyssey was tested using the built-in benchmark, and was another test that saw big gains from the 8GB variant, at least with the very high setting preset anyway. At 1080p, the 8GB version was 23% ahead of the 4GB, and then it was 30% faster at 1440p, where the 1% low was now ahead of the average FPS from the 4GB. The The Witcher 3 tends to be a fairly GPU-heavy game, however the memory difference didn't really seem to be a factor at ultra settings, as there was very little difference between the two in this title. The Division 2 was tested with the game's benchmark tool, and at 1080p the 8GB version was just 3% ahead of the 4GB. But then at 1440p there's a much bigger difference where the 8GB was now almost 27% higher in average frame rate, with a 1% low ahead of the 4GB's average. Ghost Recon Breakpoint was also tested using the built-in benchmark, and the 8GB 5500 XT had an 8% lead in average FPS at 1080p over the 4GB, increasing significantly to a 21% lead at 1440p, so another where the extra memory was more beneficial above 1080p. Overwatch was tested in the practice range, so while not quite the same as actual gameplay, it allows me to perform the same test pass more accurately, which is ideal for comparison purposes. In any case, there was minimal difference between the two in this test. Not enough that you'd actually notice a difference in practice anyway. Rainbow Six Siege was tested with the game's benchmark tool. Again, the results were pretty similar between the two and well within margin of error ranges, so it doesn't seem to matter which you pick here. Strange Brigade was tested using Vulkan and also with the built-in benchmark, and was another where there was almost zero difference between the two. In fact, there was actually zero difference at 1440p in terms of average FPS. I've tested CSGO with the Euletical FPS benchmark, and this was another test where the extra memory hardly made a practical difference. You could just as easily go the 4GB option in this title and save the money. Over all 17 games tested, the 8GB card was performing around 12% better in terms of average FPS. As you can see though, it really depends on the specific game. The bottom 9 games are only seeing a 0 to 3% performance improvement with the 8GB model, so clearly the extra VRAM isn't very beneficial in these titles at this resolution with the settings I'm using. Some of the games like Battlefield 5 saw a huge improvement with the extra VRAM though, and these titles with larger gains are clearly influencing the overall average. At 1440p, the average improvement seen with the 8GB increases to 15%. While neither of these are really meant for 1440p gaming, it should be possible with lower settings in some titles. And the extra VRAM with the 8GB model is offering more of a benefit compared to 1080p. That said though, 8 of the games still only saw a 0 to 2% increase on the 8GB. Here's what total system power draw from the wall looks like during 2 different games. In The Witcher 3, there was only a 0.5% improvement to average FPS with the 8GB card, and this was resulting in about 3% more power used. In Battlefield 5 though, there was a much larger 60% boost with the 8GB card, and this time the 8GB card was using 13.6% more power. As both cards I'm testing with have different cooling solutions, I haven't looked at thermals, as it would be less of a fair comparison. Now for the final difference, the price. You can find updated prices linked in the description. At the time of recording, the 4GB version starts at $170 while the 8GB version starts at $200 so 17.6% more money for the 8GB. Here in Australia, the 4GB starts at $299 Australian dollars, while the 8GB goes for $349 Australian dollars, or 16.7% more money, so a similar ratio. In terms of cost per frame, the 4GB is winning as it's better value. I had the 8GB averaging 95 FPS over all 17 games, and the 4GB averaging 88 FPS. So not that big of a difference compared to the price difference. If you're playing games that won't really benefit from the extra VRAM, then you can definitely save some money just by sticking with the 4GB model, at least for today. Games that do take advantage of the extra memory and perform better though could see the 8GB being worthwhile, but it's really going to depend on the specific game. Over time, future games will tend to make use of more memory, so the 8GB model would likely last you longer. But of course, you could save some money today, then just upgrade in the future when something better exists. With the specific cards I'm testing, the Sapphire Pulse with 4GB memory goes for $180, while the 8GB Gigabyte card I'm using is $220, so 22% more money in this instance. If you're considering either of these options, you're also going to want to investigate the 1650 Super, which tends to be better value than the 5500 XT. I've already compared the 8GB 5500 XT with the 1650 Super, and I'll compare the 4GB model in a future video. So with all of that in mind, which would you pick? The 4GB or 8GB version of the Radeon RX 5500 XT? Let me know in the comments, and if you're new to the channel, consider getting subscribed for future comparisons and tech videos like this one.